Welcome to the J.R. Hendrick Texan Night, a podcast of the early life of yours truly. This story is called The Catfish King and the Spring Break Build Down. Here we go. March 14th, 1994, 10:55 a.m. Eastern. Meanwhile, back in Washington, Jim is in his office with a sigh of relief. Today he was having lunch with Newt Gingrich at the Boxcar Tavern. Betsy was aware of that and agreed to have lunch with White House Social Secretary Ann Stock at the Lafayette, 10:30 a.m. Central. J.R. and his friends arrive at the house of Larry Thurber. Come on in, you boys. Dad's off on business in Corpus Christi, and Mom's off doing errands in Dallas, so we can have a little fun, Larry said. What do you have in mind? J.R. asked. I know it's a little unorthodox, but how about a Bible study? Now you're talking, Joe said. J.R. knew that Ken would be gone to Tyler most of the day, but he asked him to meet him at the Thurber house in Denton, 12 p.m. Eastern. In Washington, D.C., Jim is having lunch with House Minority Leader Newt Gingrich. He's just cutting more business and it'll bring down more jobs, Gingrich said. Right on. My oldest son knows that, Jim said. Nice to hear those there's a conservative in the Clinton administration. We should get together sometime to talk politics more. I wish I could. But I'm leaving up to Atlanta this evening to give a speech soon. Well, we have hopes to enjoy a nice quiet evening. Jim was hoping to spend a nice quiet home but they had to deal with having Andrew House tomorrow. I want to be able to make a deal with you to settle this contract with America soon. I'd like to be a part of that, Jim said. Well then, when I get back, I'll call you and we'll speak about it soon. 2 p.m. Eastern. Jim is supervising the writing of some backgrounders for his next press statement Wednesday afternoon. He's ready to spend a nice and quiet evening with Betsy. Of course, tomorrow evening he would have dinner with Andrew House, 2 p.m. Central. Too many technical differences. Put the phone on Do Not Disturb. 2 p.m. Central. Ken arrives at the Thurber house in Denton. How are things with Crystal? Jared asked. She broke up with me, Ken said dejectedly, sitting down in the chair. But there's other fish in the sea. Debbie in Sunday school class has been wanting me to ask her out. I'll call her tomorrow. Invite her to Saturday's NFB banquet. Good idea, Jared said. Jennifer Bowers then walked into the house. Good afternoon, Jared, she said. Good afternoon. How do you know where to find me? Jared asked. Texted your friend Brent. Said you were hanging out here. 6:25 p.m. Eastern. At the Hendrick family in Great Falls, Jim and Betsy are drinking champagne. Betsy heard from Claude saying that he and Becky reconciled and that she was helping him run HV Oil. Meanwhile, Jim is glad he can finally relax after the confrontation with Erskine Bowles. Hey Jim, you remember that time we went with John Carroll on a wildcatting junket to Carlsbad? Betsy said. You've always treated us women like queens while you guys were out chasing oil and coal mines, Betsy said. It was a tough time. Claude came too, and it's okay if you could get him to stop complaining, Jim said. "7 p.m. In Washington, D.C., the cook made Betsy's good nacho recipe. Refried beans, grated cheese, guacamole, Jim's favorite, sour cream, and a jalapeno on each one. They also drank a glass of wine for dinner. At the same time, Jim is listening to the Blake Carter show. Bill Clinton, who is at the Jobs Summit in Detroit, is so full of excuses. So much that Webster Hubbell is resigning today. I guess Hubbell had enough and resigned. No doubt the Clintons want to unseat that Nixon judge. 7 p.m. Central. Meanwhile, back in Gainesville, J.R. and his friends have a cozy dinner. Jennifer Bowers is allowed to stay the night, so J.R. suggests the hide-a-bed in the upstairs den for her. Dinner is a mellowed-down version of his mother's nachos, minus guacamole, sour cream, and jalapenos, replaced with lettuce and onions. March 15th, 1:25 a.m. Central. Betsy wakes up coughing. She goes downstairs to get some NyQuil. Then she sits in the living room watching country music videos. 4:30 a.m. Eastern. Jim wakes up and goes to the shower. He would then be in the basement working out from 5 a.m. to 6:30 before breakfast of omelets, along with dressing afterwards and driving to work. This afternoon, he would be playing golf with Congressman Tom DeLay and Congressman Henry Michael. Of discussion is Congressman DeLay's desire to cut off the payroll tax from the Clinton healthcare plan. 5 a.m. Eastern. Jim decides to take an early morning swim in his indoor basement swimming pool with a view. The swim will last about an hour. 6 a.m. Eastern. Jim is back on the first floor of the mansion in the chapel, repenting of his sins. He just realized that he was to be in a teleconference with communications as director Shirley McCracken and 3 other liaison staff about Wednesday's meeting and press conference. A servant brings in his omelet, and Betsy joins him. Yeah, I know, Jim. You have a lot on your plate right now, Betsy said. But I wish you could unwind. I have too much going on, honey. I can't unwind right now, Kim said. Please do it by Thursday. I love you. That's why you're the greatest. If I didn't have this meeting this morning, I'd be alright. Okay, then cancel it and play hooky together. When I play golf this afternoon, I'll play hooky. I want you to have a good time. What's the caddies of those congressmen? Well, I always knew you had class. 7:20 a.m. Central. Jared wakes up to find Curtis and Mary in the house. He asks Mary to fix homemade cinnamon rolls using a recipe given by his grandmother, Elizabeth Swain. 8:20 a.m. Central. In Gainesville, everyone is awake and sits down to a breakfast of cinnamon rolls and water. Mary does make coffee for Chad and Cousin Joe. Jennifer would be leaving at 9 o'clock this morning, and at 3 in the afternoon, they would be at the house of Larry Thurber to enjoy a good Bible study. Through the help of the Thurber's friend, Keith, who is a oneness pastor in Fort Worth, Texas. 9:25 a.m. Eastern. Jim emerges from his office to talk to Amy Ormston, someone who is applying to be interim communications assistant upon the resignation of Shirley McCracken. He suggested that she will cover the backgrounder for tomorrow afternoon's press statement. 9 a.m. Central. Jennifer gets in her car and drives back to Fort Worth. JR, Ken, Joe, and Chad are sitting around playing Monopoly. Meanwhile, an hour ahead in Washington, Jim is examining a backgrounder from Amy Ormston. He's very pleased with her work copy and says it may be a part of his statement tomorrow afternoon. 2:25 p.m. Eastern in Washington, D.C. Jim is speaking to his public liaison crew about tomorrow's press statement. Must be 10:25, okay. Luckily, the next press statement wouldn't be until Saturday afternoon. Meanwhile, at the Henry Mansion in Washington, D.C., Betsy is requesting a forwarding address for all business correspondence at the ranch to go directly to the Hendrick residence in Great Falls. She also had her secretary call Alamo Prep to request in a copy of official records transcripts upon Christine's completion of 8th grade to start high school at Cornerstone Christian Academy. 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Meanwhile, at the Potomac Golf Club, Jim is golfing with Congressman Tom DeLay and Congressman Henry Michael. The latter had hinted that Frank Thompson from Kentucky and Jack Duffy from Tennessee were considering breaking from the Democratic Party to vote against Bill Clinton's health care package.